elite sports science. But again, that kind of is a very niche market, and a lot of, qualifications kind of require you to have often master's or PhD level to be able to get that. So ESSA are our governing body. They're Exercise and Sports Science Australia for sports science. And they released a graduate report at the start of 2018, which basically detailed where people were going in terms of they were going down a sports science route, or they're going down a clinical route. And we found that a lot of people were doing clinical, as were we, but a lot of these pathways were fairly limited, particularly from an undergraduate perspective. And it meant that people were only getting into these pathways by doing exercise and sports science, where we know that there's other degrees such as health and phys ed, outdoor education, health promotion, or sport rec management, sport business, that sort of thing, that also have very strong links to sport as well. And those pathways needed to be broadened a bit more. So we kind of put our heads together and we said, well, we no longer want to do the clinical degree, because every man and his dog in WA was doing that one, and they were being quite restrictive on a lot of the areas where you could go into. So we kind of thought, well, we could have a point of difference where, rather than going down the elite sports science route, we could look at what's happening in federal government or what's happening nationwide at the minute to be able to direct where new courses of study were. And one thing that got caught our eye was the Sport 2030 plan, which was basically lots of funding in infrastructure and programs of basically trying to get people access to community level sport and trying to get people more actively involved and kids in sport, which is obviously something that's it's kind of in a downward spiral at the minute to try to boost that. And if we look at a current workforce of over 1.5 million coaches, instructors and teachers, we probably looked at trying to align that Sport 2030 plan to some sort of tertiary education to help people who were maybe wanting to get into coaching type roles and where they want to move. And there's been some success in Eastern States universities that have industry links with their current coaching courses. We've been Victoria University with Western Bulldogs, for example. And there's also Notre University that have links with Carlton Football Club and Melbourne City Football Club. But as you can imagine, these are quite high elite sports science type linkages. And again, it's kind of quite vague on the sport coaching program from 2030, which we'd like to get aligned with. So currently there's nothing available in Western Australia that has this. I know we're talking about going online. Other people that were talking about linkages, I'll touch on at the end in terms of where we've had some feedback from certain organizations based on probing this degree and the type of people we could have. Now, we know that coaches in industry have an ability to be listened to and by a lot of younger athletes, mentored and directed in terms of not just their sporting prowess, but also how they grow and how they interact with other people as well, and also officials and other team members on the pitch from a leadership position. So what we want to do is, when we're going to talk about the course outlines in the next couple of slides, is we want to have a look at something called holistic athlete development. And this is where we look at how an effective coach can be developed by using all the different topics that are currently happening in coaching, everything from motion analysis or looking at how players move with technique, for example, looking at how their game strategy is as well, looking at recovery, tactics, and also the mental side of the game as well, which is today, it's a massive importance focus to want to start working on. And we've basically looked at these learning outcomes and tried to align them with the Sport 2030 plan. So basically to develop effective coaches and leaders, but more importantly, to have a standardized qualification, be that at university tertiary level, being post-grad, in grad cert, grad dip, and we also see a master's level coming out there. So it means that people can have the ability to travel internationally, to have a recognized qualification, not just within their country, to show that they've got effective coaching strategies to be implemented there. And again, it also gives us a point of difference from a more varied undergraduate background. So like I said, a lot of the other degrees I touched on before were from a specific, narrow sports science point of view, whereas we're opening this up to people who've got backgrounds in sport business, sport management, even things like nutrition, sports science, health promotion, phys ed. But we've also got, I think Anika's going to talk on this a bit later as well, the ability to come in without an undergraduate degree. So if you've got really good coaching experience, that's taken into consideration, because we may have a lot of people who've been in high-level sport their whole lives and not had time to go to university, but they'd be really effective coaches and probably are already in industry, but are looking for some sort of vocational top-up. So again, we're quite open to the entry points for people who are coming in there. So this is just looking at our grad cert program, and this is based on the part-time loading for 2020. So we're looking at getting into semester 2 at the end of July, and the courses, we call the units courses now, are looked at leadership and culture in sport, and also professional practice in high performance sport as well. So a lot of the backgrounds in the cultures that's happening in sport at the minute, Fleur's going to look after that one. I'm going to give you some samples of her stuff in a minute. And then we've got professional practice in high performance sport, which is what Jenny looks after. And Jenny's going to be looking at everything from drugs in sport to athlete management, recovery, and also importantly, the mental health aspect as well, which is a big add-on for the course that we have. This will go full-time as of 2021. So it will mean that all of these courses will be available in semester 1. Semester 2 will be the follow-on, which is the grad diploma. So that will essentially be, it says year 2, but it's basically from 2021. This is all going to be semester 2, as this would be semester 1. And this is where we kind of have add-on courses for people who want to do a little bit more. So this gets very hands-on when it comes to advanced strength and conditioning, such as learning advanced training techniques, specifically Olympic lifting, but also the strategies employed for putting conditioning in place at a club level. We also look at ethical issues, which is a university-wide course that's taken on board. And we also look at integrated approaches to athlete health and performance. So a lot of holistic methods of how we can improve individual teams, individual athletes, and also a team background as well for performance there. So as of 2021, this will be a full year, not 2 years. And also as of 2021 for the grad cert, this will be all of semester 1. But semester 2 will basically be these 2 units. So if you were to enroll in the grad cert for next semester, you'll be studying these 2, and then you'll be finished middle of next year, because these 2 will be running at the start of next year, semester 1. So let's have a look at some of the things where we're talking about the courses involved. So we're not going to talk about the credentials, we've already seen them, but the one that I'm going to be looking after for semester 1 is performance technology and analysis for coaches. So essentially, and one of the reasons why we have an on-campus intensive is because you have to prove that you can use notational software, and we're using something called Sport Code, which is where you'll be able to track like a training session or a passage of play during a sport or a team sport event. And you have to be able to use software that allows me to have some sort of output on what just happened, such as completed passes, successful strategies or gameplay plans that you need to be aware of. And that's a very objective in terms of it is what it is, proving that you've got to work there. We also look at GPS usage as well. So your ability to set up GPS, implement a small-sided game, and be able to tell me what metrics that you're using from your GPS, such as total distance or high-speed running, that sort of things. And then how do you put them into programs to make that really effective? So a couple of talks that we've done last year, particularly with using performance analysis, was talking about how do we put all these things together. And we did a really good opening event where we had a lot of coaches come down, and we talked about a strategy of how to use performance analysis in terms of linking up with the outcomes and the needs of different sports. So again, it's a blank canvas when it comes to, you can use these devices for any sport or any individual team event, but as a coach, you need to know what are the most important factors rather than just throwing lots of information at the actual athletes. And the feedback is the most important thing from a coaching point of view. How do you relate that feedback to not only your team, but also your other head coaches as well? Another things we talked about in there was the management application. So how am I using this information to adjust my training load for my athletes, set appropriate recovery strategies, and also prepare me for big games where you've got a couple of weeks of strong opposition, or you've got games where you've got a couple of easy teams, and therefore you might want to start maybe doing a bit more loading up through your training management there. So a lot of it gets covered in that degree. So again, that's just a bit of a sample of what happens there. As we said before, one of Fleur's courses will be multi-dimensional coaching practice. What she'll have you do is basically develop different coaching styles. So you obviously see different coaches. Some of them are quite, they like to wear a suit on game day. They're quite quiet with the press, but they're a tactical genius in the background. And then you've got ones that have got like the tracksuit on, very vocal, like to get involved, and they get different responses from different teams and different players. So it's important that you're able to facilitate a session to be able to show what these different styles are, and maybe find one that's going to be suited to you as part of the learning environment for that course. So something that Fleur's involved with, she is the only female head coach at a men's SBL team here in Western Australia, the Colburn Cougars. But she's also very big on developing female talent and female athletes as well. So it's important to realize coaches in sport is developing, we've got obviously a lot of men's events, but if we look at what's happening in the world of women's sport at the minute, at this point last year, we had 3 sports which were dominated by Australian women. So it's something that kind of needs to be addressed in coaching strategies. And then she'll follow that up with what's happening at state and federal strategies to try to facilitate and grow that area as well. So such as developing leadership styles and networks and skills to be able to grow and try to develop those networks as well within that coaching culture. Ash, you're going to see for advanced S&C. So this is going to be where you're going to learn and build on what you know from what you do in the gym, and be able to show some advanced moves from your athletes. As I said, this will be another one that requires an on-campus intensive week. So we can't just expect you to watch videos and become Olympic lifting champion. You obviously have to come in and demonstrate these techniques so you can take them away. And also what's important about this course is formulate your programs for different athletes, different teams, to know what's going to work in different situations. And another thing that Ash talked about before was traditional model versus newer models. And traditional models was where you had lots of different coaches within a certain team, but no one was really talking to each other about what was going on. They kind of stuck to their areas. And it was also quite a challenge to try to work by yourself and not incorporate other people. And in terms of a coaching overall, this might meant that you would have had to incorporate some technical stuff, such as skills development, tactical or some game reading styles and how you're going to passage plays, and also from a conditioning point of view, the physical part of that as well. So it's important to learn how you're going to put all that together. And in doing that, you might want to put together your technical and your tactical, and therefore be able to incorporate small-sided games to learn skills, but also some passage of play as well. You also want to have a look at your field sizes to maybe change them. So if you want to work on more skills-based stuff, get a bit smaller, incorporate more athletes, more rule changes. Sorry, I'm just going to back that up. And what you'll find here is an example of how you can actually put together these technical and tactical. But the most important thing is between different coaches as well. So you're working as a coaching team rather than an individual trying to look after yourself, because it's important, as I said, for the notational analysis stuff, is to get feedback, and feedback within the coaching network is massive there. And that's a big part of Ash's course there, not just teaching you how to do Olympic lifts. Jenny's looking at the athlete health and performance strategies. So the biggest thing that Jenny's going to talk about here is looking at supplement research, for example. So talking about educating athletes on what they can, what they can't use. It's a very gray area when it comes to something like supplements. And it's important that you don't get caught out with your team on things that you're using if you don't know where to get those from. So it's important to understand both the supplement use and the protocol employed if you are using it, and where you actually get the important resources from. So ASADA, for example, knowing you can check your supplements online, Sports Dietitians Australia, and finding out if it's important to get that as part of your recovery strategies. Another thing that Jenny's going to be using in this course as well is the mental health aspect, and that's a huge thing. And again, that's going to be 4 weeks of part of that course is going to be contact with a mental health professional in terms of learning how to look after your athletes' mental health, but also looking after your mental health as well, which is a massive part of what's happening on the course there. So in terms of the overall goals of the course, what we're looking at is you have to get out there and you have to implement what you're learning in terms of practice what you preach. So we're not only asking you to do lots of hours in terms of getting your logbook together, but we're looking at 20 observational hours within different levels of sport. And we're going to try to get you to break this up. So we're going to get you to sample other sports within your area, such as field-based sports, contact, non-contact, individual sports as well. So you get an idea of how it works in a team context and also an individual context as well, and how you're going to use those skills. So observational means that you kind of sit back, see how the coaches operate, and be able to keep diaries and logs of how they have worked, and again, how you would incorporate your learning from what you've done on the course so far into those areas as well. We also have a look at the business and the management side of things as well within Jenny's courses. To be able to know how to run as a coach, how to operate, and also look at all the background stuff that you may not think is applicable to you as a coach. And as I've already touched on the mental health aspect as well, which is massively important. Now, we want to push this course to a lot of organizations as well. Currently, we're in talks with a lot of the organizations that you see on the screen. Some of the most important ones that we have there are probably ESSA, so Exercise and Sport Science Australia. We would like to get them on board with people who are undertaking accreditations and also link into not only advanced exercise science and also clinical exercise physiology, but also open up to sport coaching as well, which is a massive aspect. We also look at CEDA, and CEDA look after people who finish at year 10 level, I think that is, and then move into like a sport type role where they're learning sport, learning organization. And we've actually got a really good linkage with CEDA for our sport rec and sport business students who will come through an undergrad in sport rec or sport rec management, sport business, and then be able to slot right into a coaching postgrad opportunity, which is the two we have up here, and therefore we develop pathways. We've also been talking very briefly with Athletics Australia as well, who are looking for some sort of tertiary course like the one we offer to be able to help their coaches to kind of upskill and also get on board with it. So that's going to be a big goal for our course in terms of getting it out there to the different areas. So like we said, we're not pitching this at high-level elite sport. We want you to be able to apply what you're learning here if you're already involved in sport at both local, state, and national level. Other jobs include sports and performance analyst. So a lot of the things you learn from training and monitoring of sport as well, that's a big thing to be able to take into a sports environment. And also sport and development officers. So being able to look at talent identification and implement sport within a coaching environment, such as our CEDA people that we're going to get through, who've got maybe a background in sport business and sport management as well. So they're just some of the career opportunities that we envisage from people coming out with this degree as well. So I'm going to hand back over to Anika, who's going to talk about the entry requirements. Do you want to just unmute yourself there?
Yep.
Yep.
So, Lou, I think you said that you have a degree in outdoor rec. Was that right? Great. So you meet the requirement essentially to enter into the diploma or the cert or the grad certificate. If you have any friends that don't have a degree but are in this world, there is opportunities for people if the dean is satisfied that they can do the postgraduate level studies and have sufficient experience with a background in coaching and leadership. So that's kind of cool because we've found out in this realm that there are a lot of people who have, you know, extensive experience in this area but have never got a degree. Perhaps they were a competitive athlete and then went on to coaching and whatnot, and we still want to capture them if relevant for them. So the fees are structured a particular way. They can be the courses can be taken not for degree or towards the degree. At the moment, the grad cert it's a fee help available degree, which is kind of like HEX help, but at a postgraduate level. So you can still defer your payments and all that kind of stuff. The government will still extend you a deferment loan. There's a slight interest attached to it, but the grad cert is $12,340, and the grad diploma is $24,680. The areas that I also like to highlight as well is some scholarship opportunities. So Sport Australia has got a Women Leaders in Sport grant that's opening in August that may be very relevant to you to apply for. So yeah, and there's some scholarships at Notre as well that's worth exploring if you qualify for them as well.